Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dig into a really simple but incredibly powerful idea. What if the single most effective tool in addiction recovery isn't a new treatment, but just seeing, with your own eyes, that recovery is actually possible? We're going to look at the hard science that shows how making recovery visible creates real, measurable hope. And this quote right here, it really nails it. We often think of hope as this fuzzy, soft feeling, but what we're talking about today is different. Hope is a measurable force. We're going to look at data that treats hope like something real you can actually track, something that has a predictable impact on a person's recovery. So, the big question is this all just wishful thinking, or is there some real science to back it up? Well, the answer is a resounding yes, and the data is pretty amazing. So, let's get into the evidence. All right, so first things first, let's explore how researchers have actually managed to quantify hope and prove just how critical it is for recovery. This is the key connection we're making today. You know, when someone is struggling, it can feel like they're totally lost, like there's no way out. But visibility, well, it acts like a bridge. When people can physically see recovery happening around them, it completely shifts their internal belief system. It makes them think, hey, if they can do it, maybe I can too. Okay, now let's get into the really interesting stuff, the science of belief. This is where the evidence gets so compelling, because we can look at actual clinical studies that measure the raw power of your mindset. Okay, check this out because it's pretty incredible. A major study in the journal Pain followed 255 patients in a rehab program, and they found that the only patients who showed significant improvement after a whole year were the ones who had positive beliefs about their recovery before the treatment even started. The group with negative beliefs, they got the exact same treatment but saw zero improvement. Their belief was the actual active ingredient here. And listen, this isn't some one-off thing that only applies to pain. Another huge study, this one in the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry, found the same powerful link with depressed cardiac patients. It connected their outlook, their optimism, directly to how well they responded to treatment. And what's so wild is just how clear the difference is. I mean, look at this data. The optimists in the study were more than 3 times as likely to respond to their depression treatment compared to the pessimists. That is a massive difference, and it's driven entirely by their mindset, not by a different drug. And it gets even more precise. That same study found that for every single point a person went up on the optimism scale, their odds of responding to treatment jumped by 12%. It just goes to show that even small shifts in what you believe is possible can create these very real, very measurable changes in your health. Okay, so we've established that hope works, but the question is, how? How does a feeling, an emotion, actually turn into concrete action and successful recovery? Let's break down the mechanics. See, hope isn't a passive thing where you just sit back and wish for the best. It's an active ingredient. When you have hope, you're literally better at coming up with strategies to reach your goals. You're more likely to stick with those plans even when it gets hard. It builds resilience, and it even helps you fight off denial. You could say hope is the fuel for the engine of recovery. And this is how it all ties together in a neat little bow. The science gives us the proof that hope works. Visibility, seeing other people succeed, gives us the tangible evidence we need to actually start believing it for ourselves. And that belief is what finally sparks real action. It's a simple, powerful chain reaction. Seeing leads to believing, and believing leads to doing. So that brings us to the big idea here. How do we actually put all this science into practice in our communities? Let's talk about making recovery visible. Now, to really get this, we need to understand a key concept called recovery capital. The easiest way to think about it is like a personal toolkit for success. It's not just about willpower. It's the sum of all the real-world resources a person has to help them start and sustain their recovery. And this is what that capital actually looks like. Supportive friends, a steady job, a safe place to live, access to care. These are the building blocks. And making recovery visible is what connects people to all of this. It's the signpost that says, hey, over here is a job program that gets it, or here's a community that will have your back. It basically lights up the path forward. All right, for our last section, let's zoom out a bit. Let's see how this science can transform not just one person, but our entire workplaces, our neighborhoods, and even our society as a whole. And this right here is why this matters so much. For way too long, addiction has been this hidden struggle, which feeds the totally false and devastating idea that nobody ever gets better. By making recovery visible, we can actively build a new culture, one where support is out in the open and hope is just the default setting. And this slide just illustrates the choice we have perfectly. On one hand, you have hidden recovery, which leads to isolation, stigma, and that false belief that recovery is impossible. But on the other hand, you have visible recovery. It does the exact opposite. It amplifies hope, it builds community, and it shows everyone that recovery isn't just possible, it's happening all around us every single day. So I'll leave you with this one last thought to chew on. We've looked at the science, the mechanics, and the strategy, and it all points to the profound, almost unbelievable power of visibility. What if the most effective thing we can do, the greatest catalyst for change, isn't some new therapy, but simply a story we can all see?